My trip started in Boston, and I first headed north up the Atlantic coast and over to the White Mountains, further west to the Green Mountains, on down to Bennington, and then to Sturbridge. My car for the trip was appropriately in maple leaf red. I went to New England in October hoping to see colour, and the good folks of Maine provided it in the form of displays of pumpkins and pot mums in profusion. Nature's fall colours would take over later when I reached the mountains of New Hampshire and Vermont. I already knew that chrysanthemums came in a whole range of colours, but I'd absolutely no idea of the multitude of colours, shapes and sizes that pumpkins could be had in. Both species seemed to have completely taken over the farm shop, along with a few decorated corn sheaves and corn dolls. As I headed on north to the White Mountains through the Sebago Lakes region, I stopped off for a so-called end-of-season foliage cruise. The boat was named the Songo River Queen and was styled on a Mississippi River paddle wheeler. The cruise was around the shores of Long Lake. It clearly showed Americans' love of building by lake shores, with everything from mansions through cabins to basic boathouses to be seen nestling in between the trees. When I reached the railway town of North Conway, at the edge of the White Mountain National Forest, I was introduced to the pumpkin people, mannequins of all sorts with pumpkins at their heads. Later, I found that there was no limit to the indignities a pumpkin could suffer. Another feature of New England is its covered bridges, dating back to the 1800s. All states have them, but Vermont has over 100 and New Hampshire over 50. These pumpkin card sharps were enjoying their game outside the local cafe. There were also sea creatures and even horses getting in on the act, but the really scary set, called Pumpkin Food Chain, was outside the local primary school. While most of the covered bridges were still fully functioning, sometimes road realignments had made them redundant and available for other purposes. In the north of the White Mountains is Mount Washington. At 6,288 feet, it is the highest peak in the range, but it is also famous for its dangerously erratic weather. Even with a day of clear blue skies elsewhere, it alone was still capped with clouds. I had hoped to go up the famous Auto Road, but because of poor visibility and ice, travel up was limited to the halfway point. So, after a pause, I decided on a plan B and go round the other side of the mountain where a cog railway operated, and hope that there was a late afternoon clearing of the weather. Fortunately, it did clear, and the masts of the observatory right in top suddenly appeared. My trip up the amazing little vintage railway is the subject of a separate video. Maples, white buildings and blue skies always make a winning combination. The low cross struts on this bridge had definitely caught some people out. Each covered bridge seems to have its own unique internal design. A little further on was the stop-off point for the scenic lower falls. This viewpoint was called Sugar Hill, presumably after all its sugar maple trees. At Indian Head, the totem pole was quite impressive, but the natural rock feature took a bit of imagining. Watching a sunset over water must be one of the best ways to end a day. Some further pumpkinitis. Obviously, even pumpkin dogs and cats can sometimes require a vet's attention. Another bridge in yet another design, perhaps not surprisingly since they were built over a wide area and over a 100-year period. I passed through Hanover, where the Dartmouth colleges have military associations. Vermont maple syrup was of course widely available in a whole variety of containers. Taftville Bridge near Woodstock was special in that it has a double span. Built in 1836, it had just undergone a full 2-year restoration. With these waterside scenes, I almost felt as if I was back home in Scotland. some of the best foliage colour I saw during the trip was in the town of Bennington, and when the breeze sprang up, it clearly showed why Americans logically call the season the fall. Bennington was the location for a major battle in 1777 during the American Revolutionary War. A 300 feet high stone obelisk was built at the end of the 19th century to commemorate it. There is an observation platform 200 feet up, which fortunately is now served by an elevator. The platform provides views across the states of Vermont, New York, and Massachusetts. Vermont had plenty of pumpkin farms. You could even go out into the fields to choose your own perfect one, or you could go to the pre-picked aisles. This farm also had a speciality line in variegated corn on the cob. The last stage on this part of my loop was at Taftville Bridge, and my hotel was located right by a 183-acre lake called Cedar Pond. When I went out one still morning before breakfast, the area was shrouded in mist, giving a very eerie feel. It looked as if the sun did want to break soon, so I postponed breakfast and fully enjoyed the slowly emerging scene.